People have to remember there is a lot of hard work that goes into building something. It's not like it happens overnight. It is a tough route you're going to have to dedicate your life to. It's very rewarding if you stick with it.
Hey, you're tuned in to the Mike and Matty Show, where we have casual conversations, breaking down science, and exploring our creator journey so we can all learn how to improve our lives. In today's episode, we're sitting down with my friend, Drew Steedman. He's an entrepreneur who founded Orange County Bookkeeping and one of those people who successfully transitioned to the digital nomad lifestyle. So in this conversation, we talk about the motives and the thought processes for anyone thinking about entrepreneurship versus going down the traditional pathway. We also talk about the mindsets and the motivations around building a business and how to think about your personal finances and money as you start on this new path. So calm your mood, clear your mind, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Mike and Matty Show.
Thanks for having me.
That's what it's called.
Mike and Matty Show. Nice and simple.
Today, I'm sitting with a very, very special guest. We have Drew Steedman.
How's it going, guys?
He's one of Orange County's finest.
Appreciate that.
He's the founder of Orange County Bookkeeping.
That's correct.
One of the few entrepreneurs that I know, and also an excellent rock climber.
Hey, we've been climbing for a while now. It's on and off, but yeah, man, it's a fun sport. You guys should try it out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we just kind of start a little bit what we call the like a new wave, a new path for people to take. And you took this new path, whether you knew about it or not. We think about students in the US. They go to college, you get a degree, you go work for a company, you stay with that company for, 15, 20, 30 years. You retire and then you, enjoy the rest of your money when you're like 65.
Right,
old.
very much our parents' route and grandparents' route. Yeah.
That's a very traditional pathway, but you took something very different. And I think that's a very scary path that a lot of people don't take. And so why don't we just kind of start? I would just love to hear kind of your thought process back in college when you decided that you wanted to try entrepreneurship as opposed to continuing on the traditional path.
Yeah, good question. So I think it really starts with being surrounded by good mentors and people that at a young age were kind of encouraging to take those risks. They basically, whether it be like my grandparents, my grandpa, I had two grandpas that were both, one was more safe and then the other one was more entrepreneurial, right? He said, okay, well, you're young, go give it a shot. And I also had some professors that early on were basically saying, either through examples of other students or through themselves, were saying, hey, worst case scenario, you're gonna come out of college with 2 degrees. And, so he's like, basically you can go take those risks now because you have a longer timeline. You have basically a longer runway if things go south. If things go bad, you've got a chance to catch up, right? So do it when you're young. And so I think that was kind of like the first, like those were kind of like the inspiring moments, was basically having those mentors or those people kind of pushing me in the right direction. And then from there, I tried to do a traditional, I was like, okay, I'll go work for somebody, my freshman year of college.
Right.
And I think it lasted like 2 days. It was like a nighttime shift at Nordstrom.
2 days?
Yeah. It was, and I was like, this isn't it.
Wow.
I can't do this. And so, so I basically reached out to the Career Development Center at Chapman and said, hey, like I'm just curious about getting my feet wet with startups. And that my background is I'm studying finance. I know some math skills, right? Can you just put me in touch with people, in the community at Chapman that are working with startups that need some finance help and just get me kind of exposed to that. And so that's kind of how it started was I got put in touch with some startups. And that was kind of like the first domino that fell, and kind of seeing all these people that just had these brilliant ideas and getting exposed to it so early on. I mean, we started a company in college and just basically getting exposed to basically getting burned by contractors, understanding like intellectual property. So all these things at an early age, but a lot of failures. Right. And you kind of learn through that and basically seeing that the consequences for failure are not that bad. And being okay with living with failure, I think, was kind of the,
that's a very interesting point that you make, because especially when people are younger, in their early 20s or like high school to college age, failure is actually very demotivating.
Oh, for sure.
Don't you think?
100%.
But it wasn't for you.
Well, I mean, it was at times, right?
Okay.
And I think it was one of those things that people blow the consequences in their mind of failure. We always think about the worst case scenario,
right?
And then you actually look at real outcomes. They're usually a lot less severe than what's built up in our mind.
Right.
And so I think, again, there's some people, whether it be family or friends, that say, okay, well, don't do that. It's scary. It's risky, but then you do it enough times and you realize that, okay, well, it's not that scary. It's not that bad. And so I think we just have to stop listening to the bad advice about how scary failure is, about how scary rejection is, how scary, the risk is, right? And obviously, depending on your situation, you have to evaluate the impact of those risks, right? It might be more difficult for somebody has a family, who may be in debt or something. So they have to be more careful, but it doesn't mean you can't still pursue what you want to do and kind of aim for that lifestyle and that dream, that you want. Right. I think you just have to you have to take into account what the circumstances are. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's why it's important to do it when you're young, because you don't have those obligations. You don't have people relying on you for support and stuff. So do it when you're young, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. The more independence you have to make the decisions for yourself, the easier it's going to be to make those failures without anyone also suffering from the failure with you.
Right.
I think that's a really that's a lot of collateral damage, and that's something that if I can think about my life, it was something I had to think very, very hard on when I decided to take a break from clinical medicine.
Yeah.
Because yes, it was a decision I had to make for myself as an independent human, but I had dragged along my parents, and my friends and my family all for the last 10 years on that journey. And to take a step away from it, it felt to my parents and to people that are close to me like a stab in the back.
Right.
That I would do something like that.
Yeah. So how do you feel now? I mean, where are you in that journey now, and how are things kind of progressing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've done so much self-reflection on this idea of changing career paths or changing direction in where you want to go with life. And I'm just very lucky and very fortunate that my family is supportive no matter what I do. Although they may be just saying that through clenched teeth or something,
Yeah.
And my brother is, a fantastic partner to work with, and I've been lucky to do what I do. Like I'm very fortunate for it. But I think at the end of the day, I think you're right that it's about listening to your own gut as opposed to listening to quote unquote bad. I don't know what bad advice is really, because people can only give you advice that they think is good.
Right, based on their prior experiences.
Based on their experiences.
Right.
So to them, it's great advice.
Right.
But like you said, you have to kind of take a look at your current situation.
Yeah.
Like where you are, what you have, what experience you have. And the most important thing that I've found for actually taking the leap of faith is to just really, really think about, do you care enough to bet on yourself? Do you believe in yourself? Do you have the confidence that you can make it through whatever challenge you're going to face?
Right.
And I think early on in your 20s, this is kind of what I was talking about the whole fear of failure and risking rejection and all those things. You have to bet on yourself.
Right.
And you have to be confident with betting on yourself. Because if you don't have confidence in yourself, then it doesn't really matter which direction you take. You can listen to bad advice, you can listen to good advice. But either option that you take, if you don't have confidence in yourself, you're going to struggle. Right. It doesn't matter if I stayed as a doctor and I just didn't think I was going to be a good doctor, then I would still have as much stress and as much anxiety, and I would just be doing a job that I didn't like even more.
Yeah. And people don't understand how powerful their mind is.
Yeah, it's all about just confidence in yourself. And I think that's something that young people just don't understand as much because they haven't gone through as much experience. Mm-hmm. That if you're actually capable of doing quite a bit, and the fear of uncertainty is just so overwhelming. Yeah. That you usually just are paralyzed to take any action at all. Yeah. So what you're saying is get all of these failures as early as possible. Yeah. And so that you can build up that mental resilience so that you can make these decisions easier in the future.
Right. And there's a kind of a saying that it's kind of cheesy, but it's either you win or you learn, right? In terms of when it comes to failure. So, look at it as just a learning lesson if things don't go the way you wanted it to go. And just, try to avoid making those same mistakes down the road. Mm-hmm. And then also going back to what you talked about in terms of having that self-confidence, I think people forget that the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself.
Of course.
And so I think that they have to learn to love themselves. They have to learn to appreciate alone time and being, like you said, just comfortable with who they are, and I think the rest will follow, right?
Yeah. What do you currently do right now?
Yeah, so the business has, to give you more context, I went back and got my MBA in accounting. I did a little bit of commercial real estate. Again, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. Money was great, but just not the type of industry that was for me, right? And so I went back, got my master's, and wanted to get additional education to start the business. I wanted to basically take some of the clients I had in college and as well post-college, and I wanted to grow the bookkeeping, accounting business because I was good at it. And I knew that a lot of people don't like to do it.
Right.
And it's a skill that either they don't have time to do it or they just don't care for it. And
When did you start the bookkeeping business?
yeah, so what I did was while I was going through my MBA, I used the courses to basically build my business plan. And
So you were learning along the way with building.
Exactly. So we had to do like marketing plans for classes. We had to do financial plans for classes. And the thesis was like a 70-something page business plan. And I just did it on my business. And so by the time I was done, I had a website, I had a business plan, I had the full name. And so it pretty much launched it right when I graduated from my MBA, which was terrible timing, March of 2020, right? Enter COVID.
Yeah.
But so I mean, the good news is that at that point I was already doing stuff remote. So the transition to remote life was not. I was already doing that.
It was seamless.
Yeah, and so that was convenient for me. Obviously, people didn't want to spend money at that time on additional services they didn't need, or maybe it was okay, I can get through this on my own. But once kind of things kind of cleared up with COVID a little bit, that's when things started to get busy. And so now I've got a decent clientele, and it's more boutique, right? I do everything right now by myself, but as we've talked about in the past, things are kind of moving towards me needing to hire people.
Right.
But yeah, so now it's kind of moving towards more CFO, more consulting type work. And that's really exciting because especially if you got buddies that have their own businesses or side businesses and being involved with those types of projects.
Sure.
I mean, that's just fun.
Yeah.
That's just
so
good
much
time.
fun building things, making stuff.
Collaborating. I mean, it's awesome. So yeah, it's just, I'm at a point where I feel like I have the skills, knowledge, and expertise to be able to kind of pick and choose who I work with.
Right.
But again, it takes, when you're first getting started, you have to kind of just pick a price point and say, I don't know if this is going to work. You work with a lot of bad people sometimes. You have to kind of weed out the bad folks once you get to know that. And then I think the important thing too, coming down to values, if you get to a point where you feel like you're experienced enough and you have some control over who you work with, stick to your values. Don't just take things for the dollar amount. Stick to your values because you're going to be a lot happier working with people that you just, work with.
Yeah, you enjoy
their
company. There's good communication. There's good banter.
So don't sacrifice those values.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
This is not your first business, though.
Not the first business. Oh gosh,
what was the first business you started?
The first business was one that I started in college.
How old were you?
I was 20. Yeah.
20 years old. Okay.
And my business partner, she was a Chapman alumni, right? She was basically had won. I started as their finance intern for a company that had won Chapman's business plan competition the year before, and so so I got talking with her, and we were meeting I think once a week, and so we started a company that was supposed to be like a Match.com but for jobs. So it was going to be essentially like a tech company to help make the job search process for both employers and employees a lot easier. And so I mean here's a good point in terms of like failure and in terms of knowing what you're good at. I didn't have any sort of software computer science background. And neither did my business partner. And so we lacked those core competencies to build the business that really needed a founder and operators, right? That understood those building a tech company, right? And so I think for me, that was a lesson. Basically, don't get into anything maybe that you're not skilled at or familiar with, And we lost some money to some contractors that were bad apples, and we got some of it back. But again, that was a tough lesson to learn.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting. That's a lesson because I almost playing devil's advocate a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a good idea to go into business or like start building things that you don't know about,
that you're not familiar with.
Yeah, because then that forces you to learn.
I agree, but I would just say that if I would say, at least have a good mentor or somebody that's knowledgeable that you can trust to help with those building blocks.
Right.
Because if you're the one that's interviewing people and trying to hire help, but you don't know what questions to ask because you're not familiar with the skill sets needed or the price points that are, that you need for your budget and stuff, especially when you're dealing with angel investment and somebody else's money. I agree. I think it's important to try stuff that you're not familiar with because, again, that's how you grow and you step outside the comfort zone. But just have a partner or somebody that has at least, I would say, a majority of those skills. So have a partner that you can lean on for those things that you don't know about, that can teach you. But it was hard because neither of us had those skills, and so we didn't really have a strong direction. So I think if we had brought in like a third party, a third partner or something that said, hey, okay, I have these skills, we trust them, and they can kind of guide kind of the building blocks from the technical side. We can handle operations, marketing, and the financial side, but we just needed somebody that we could really trust to build the company.
A good product.
Right.
Yeah. That's also a good point. I guess you make a very good point there where, yes, you want to be learning as many skills as possible to build the best possible product, best possible business and stuff like that. But there are just some skills that require too much overhead or too much investment that you didn't have to where it would just be simpler to get like a minimum viable understanding of it and then hire out.
Right.
And or find someone who can do it. Sure, I could learn how to code and like design like a product like that, but I'm not going to spend 6 months or 2 years to do that when I can just get someone else to do it way better for me.
Right.
In a fraction of the time.
Well, and as you know, things move fast, right? Especially in the tech space. So there was a little bit of a need for first mover advantage, right?
Exactly.
If you take the time to go learn it yourself, well, somebody can swoop in there, have that technology built up before you, and then now you're out of luck, right? So I definitely agree, though. I think people should go try a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's, whether it be career stuff, whether it be hobbies, I think you need to go challenge yourself because there might be something you really like and you might be really good at it, but you just don't know. Yeah.
The next thing I want to say is like, there are also certain skills that regardless of whether you suck at them or not, you can start doing them and there won't be diminishing returns on your business.
Right.
The first one that comes to mind, like what I mean by that is like the first one that comes to mind, and I'm a little biased because I do it for almost a living now, is content creation.
Yeah.
You can be terrible at content creation and just keep doing it, and it won't hurt your business because you won't be putting too much time into like learning how to code. You know? And that's a skill. Like learning how to make great content is like, I would call it a super skill almost, because learning how to make good content requires you to learn skills that will help in every other area of your business.
That makes sense.
Like if you learn content creation, it's not just like, oh, like how do I film myself? It's like, no, how do I teach?
Right.
How do I explain what my company values are about to the public?
Yeah.
So in making content, not only are you working on your marketing skills, you're working on your sales skills, you're working on your branding skills, and you're working on like company philosophy and all that stuff at the same time.
Right.
So there are certain skills that you should always be thinking about and learning that will bleed into the rest of your business.
Oh, without a doubt. Culture. I agree because the content creation, like you said, the three main parts of any business is operations, sales/marketing, and finance, right? So that makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of overlap in those skills. Now, if you're getting so specialized where you're doing coding or something, not every business needs coding. But yeah, I agree. I think content creation in that direction, especially, I mean, it's a huge market. Online courses, YouTube channels. I mean, you've seen what people are able to do, and you're obviously going through yourself now.
Right.
And you're going to be able to see the returns and the investment that you made on yourself, and all additional skills you've learned just by basically taking that chance, and learning those skills.
Exactly.
So I think it's incredible what you guys are building. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So the first business you started with this girl, it was a matchmaking.
Yeah.
It's like a ZipRecruiter kind of thing. Like we put employees and employers together.
Yeah.
What was the next one? Or how many businesses did you go through before you landed on this bookkeeping one that you're kind of sticking with now? Yeah,
we tried a couple of different, and there's still some ideas that are still there. We were looking at e-commerce companies for a while, and I went through one that was kind of like high intensity training at like bands. Yeah. So like I actually called it hit bands, and we went through that aspect for a while. I tried looking into some like environmentally friendly like pet products and stuff.
Pet products?
Yeah. So I went
like
down
doggy treats and stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that, doggy bags, stuff like that. So I went down the rabbit hole of learning about Amazon, FBA, learning about how to properly source suppliers. But the problem with that was that, it does require a lot of like initial capital outlay. And I just didn't think, the market was so saturated at that point.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, there are certain tools in place there that you can learn about what has the best margins and where to go for your supplier and stuff. But I just didn't feel comfortable with the market at the time. And then we had some other ideas about kind of doing some self-help stuff, building these pillars and stuff that we thought would make sense.
That's Mike.
Yeah, buddy.
That's the brains of the.
That's the brains.
Brains of the operation.
The brains of the operation. I mean, if I go through my laptop and you look at how many different brands, logos, websites and stuff I've been through, it's probably been like, I don't know, like 10 to 12.
Okay.
Businesses that really didn't take off the way that I was expecting it to. But again, you learn a bunch of skills and say, okay, well, I don't like this.
Right. As long as you like go into with the mindset you said, like you either learn or you, or you either win or you learn.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Or both at the same time, honestly. Like you can also, they're not mutually exclusive. You can win and learn.
Now, let me tell you a point where I decided that the accounting made sense. The bookkeeping made sense. And when I did commercial real estate, right? And that was for like 7 months right after college.
Yeah.
And I was working hard. It was, 12-hour days. Thinking, okay, well, this is it. I'm maybe making good money and stuff. The money was good, but there was this lack of freedom. There was this lack of flexibility, and I wasn't seeing my friends. I wasn't seeing my family. I wasn't able to travel the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I felt like my lifestyle was not what I wanted it to be. So I quit that, and that's when I went and traveled. Decided to go back to get my MBA, and I just realized that again, I think it was my new priority was lifestyle and flexibility. And so now I've basically been building everything around just lifestyle. So in my opinion is that, you can kind of figure out what lifestyle you want, whatever it is, and you can fund it there's so many different ways you can make money, whether if you do, a normal W-2 job, a career that's just a 9 to 5, or the entrepreneur. There's so many different ways you can basically make your lifestyle happen. But I think you have to put that first.
Yeah. So you brought up a really interesting point about kind of pivoting to a lifestyle first approach to your entrepreneurial journey. And this is actually something that Mike and I have been very deeply interested in recently. Because when people think of entrepreneurs, you just think of like big companies, a lot of employees, getting angel investors, growing and stuff. And we kind of just took a step back and we're like, wait, we don't really want any of that. We want like a very small team, just like a few people who are like we talked about before in this podcast too, like people you like to work with, close friends, people you just want to grow together with. And we don't really care to have this giant company with a whole bunch of people, because really what our goal is, we want to have a lifestyle first approach too. So my question to you is, how did you go about deciding what that looked like for you, like a lifestyle approach? Yeah,
so it took a while, obviously, to figure out what it was you wanted in life. And once I had a chance to go travel a bit, I had some savings and stuff, that kind of kicked off the travel bug. So I knew that right away I wanted to have time available, and I didn't want to have to go request it from somebody. I didn't want to have to be like, okay, can I have time off, right? So I knew that having time off to travel was important. Having the extra time to spend with family and friends, right? Spending more time with my parents, my siblings, grandparents, that became, again, that's my number one priority, right? And then I also noticed when I was working, those 12-hour days, I wasn't taking time. I was trying to go to the gym in the morning, right? So I was trying to go at 5:30 in the morning, just to make sure I wasn't, basically taking away from my health. And so now what I've created is basically like this lifestyle. It's family, health, travel, wealth. That's kind of the 4 things that I look at in that order, right? So I put family first.
Family, health, travel,
wealth. Yeah, so it even rhymes a little bit too, which is nice. And so that's kind of what my lifestyle priority looks like, right? And so if I can make sure that, I think that you can, again, fund your travel, your health and stuff through your wealth, but I think that if something comes up with family, you have to be able to pivot and basically say, no, I need to take care of them. And family, that doesn't just include blood relatives, right? That's your friends, right? That you consider to be family. That could be significant others, right?
Right.
So having the time to basically, because you can't get that time back, right?
Of course not, yeah.
You can't get that back. So have as much time you can with them. Health, you're not any good with your business if you're not healthy.
Right.
So that means exercising, reading, drinking plenty of water, getting plenty of sleep, reducing your stress as best as possible. And then travel, there's something to be said about the education aspect of traveling. And I think that people don't realize how informative and educational travel can be for people. And whether that means just learning about new cultures, new experiences, but it's also really important for your mental health and basically de-stressing. And that's going to make you a better entrepreneur. That's going to make you a better worker. If you have those things to look forward to, you get so excited about these trips that you have planned, you're going to work harder in the days you're here.
Right.
And then, wealth, of course. I mean, that's such an important thing, but you can't sacrifice those other areas for wealth. And so I think for me, it was like, okay, I knew what I wanted life to look like. And I was like, okay, now what's a particular business, right? Okay, well, I can work from my laptop using the software with the accounting and bookkeeping stuff. And things are moving more digital. So people don't necessarily need you in the office, right. to handle their stuff. And people don't want to learn the software. They don't want to spend the time to do it. So I'll be the guy that's the expert. So that's kind of how it kind of just developed, was basically evaluating what was important in my life outside of work and putting that first. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like how you're separating them into those different buckets.
No, I mean, I love that framework. I haven't heard people use that framework to actually like set your values first and then your work around it. But yeah, what you said in the very beginning, I remember when I was working in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it was just because you go through all of med school residency and you just know, like, yeah, I'm not going to spend Christmas with my family. I'm not going to get to go home during the summers. Like, it's all like, it's expected.
Yeah.
And then they keep telling you, they keep feeding you these stories about, oh, it's going to be better. Once you're done, it's going to get better. And when I started working in the hospital, and it doesn't get better.
Yeah. It's almost false promises. Yeah.
Exactly.
It doesn't get better.
Just dragging you along.
You're just a junior doctor, then you become like mid-junior, then like eventually become senior. You're still fighting for time off.
And then you're retired. Yeah.
Exactly. And then by the time you're done, you're 65, and then you like, you know, your dream has just been a bunch of stories fed to you.
Yeah.
But if you can, so like I felt trapped, and it sounded like you somewhat felt trapped, but then you also mentioned getting bit by the travel bug.
Yes.
Which I haven't personally been bit myself.
I definitely enjoy traveling. I think you're one of the people I know who loves to travel more than most.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. My question about the traveling thing, this is what I had a question about.
Yeah.
When you do travel, is it a full-on sabbatical from work, or do you just bring your work with you?
So it depends on the travel. So last year,
Because you were in like South Africa for
Africa,
an extended period of time.
for a month, and that was basically off the grid. Just
No work.
I've got my phone if I need to put out fires, but all my clients knew that I'm gone, and so unless it's an emergency, I'm not going to respond. And so I think, but again, it comes back to setting expectations, right, and being transparent and communicating that, and so that way there's no surprises for people, right? They knew I was going to be gone. There was nothing that was immediately need to be done. So I said, hey, I'm out. I went to New Zealand for a month to visit some of my grandparents, and I had my laptop there, so I worked, of course. So I think I will usually have a laptop with me just in case, but when I'm traveling, don't bother me. Yeah,
It's not a work travel thing.
No.
Because there are some people I know who take like extended trips and just live somewhere new.
Yeah.
And then they still work there.
Yeah.
That's Eden, my friend, is a very good example.
Yeah.
Like he's been in Mexico City for like 8 months, but he just lives and works there. Like it's his regular life, and he likes to immerse himself in a different culture in that way, where he's living in and not necessarily like vacationing. Yeah. But it sounds like you kind of just do the vacation vibe.
Well, usually I'm not gone for 8 months, right? It's usually the most I've been gone was that month, right? And so generally speaking, usually 10 to 14 days is usually like kind of my max. Otherwise, you start getting kind of antsy about what you need to do back home, whether it be work. You're like, okay, this is great, but like I need to get back to stuff, get back to my routine. So I think for me, I like those short little spurts, where you can go out, experience something new, be completely, kind of off the radar for a bit, but you're not. I mean, 10 to 14 days is not that much time to have passed to really worry about, is my business going to collapse, right?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of what I prefer to do, is take the short little spurts, and again, have the laptop there in case you need to handle something, but get your projects done beforehand. And the thing that's nice about accounting and bookkeeping, it's very predictable. You know what's due.
Sure.
Obviously outside of special projects, or again, if you're taking on new roles or responsibilities, but give yourself enough runway, to be able to tackle those projects, tackle those things, so you're not again caught off guard. But yeah, so I think that's kind of what, in terms of for my travel, I would love to go, maybe do an experience like, something like Eden's doing.
Yeah.
But for
like
me,
extended
yeah,
staycation.
But I got to be here for my grandparents. I see them at least once a week. So for me, it's again seeing the family. That's kind of that balancing act. It's like, okay, well, I love to travel, but I can't sacrifice time with family. So,
Right, because that's still third on your list of priorities.
Exactly. So, but yeah, that's kind of the mindset and the framework, like you said, that I've tried to build around.
Yeah, that thing that you mentioned Eden doing, there's a lot of people call it like the seasons of their life, where like, we talked about this yesterday. We were talking about like relationships and dating.
Yeah.
Where like you don't want to just cram like 3 years of a relationship down into like 3 months, just spending all your time with a person.
Yeah.
And then we made a parallel to like learning and studying. You don't want to cram for a test. You need to space it out. It's kind of the same thing with work. Like you can't just work nonstop. You need to take some breaks. And some people space it out. They're like, this is a season where I'm working. This is a season when I'm not working at all. I'm like, I have no commitments. And that's the time where you decompress and you kind of reflect on what you want in your life and where you're going.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of pivot from there.
Well, speaking of that, even on a day-to-day basis, how do you guys find the time to basically cancel out the noise and take some time for your self-reflection? You guys have like a daily method or a daily routine that you guys follow for self-reflection, meditation? Because that's obviously an important thing. If you don't have time to maybe step away that you need to have those seasons or those breaks on a daily basis or a weekly basis, do you guys find time for that?
Yeah, definitely. I have been
You made a video about this.
pretty good at it. I've been implementing self-reflection daily. It's interesting. There's different ways you can do it, and I've shifted the way that I've done that often. In the upcoming video I actually have, I do this thing every single day called cat time. I just call it cat time because cats, they lounge around, they don't do anything. They just like, they're lazy and all
Cats
that stuff.
have it figured out.
Cats know how to, let's see like what, 12 hours a day or something
like that.
15
Jealous.
hours a day. That's like what cats do.
Really?
They just lounge and just like do nothing.
Yeah.
I think dogs are close. They're like 8 hours a day, I think, they sleep.
Yeah, but I feel like dogs have more energy. They need to be walked. They need to be played with.
But cat time is this idea that actually came from when I was in med school. But basically, if you look at my calendar, I can show my calendar. From 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock every single day, I block out everything. And it's not because I'm working.
Yeah.
It's literally just cat time. Like I just need to catch up. I just need to rejuvenate. I just need to unclose loops from the morning or like from yesterday. Just like kind of cross these T's, dot these I's. Check in with myself. Usually I'm eating some food during that time too, or watching videos or something.
Yeah.
But just like a full disconnect mode for a little bit. And that just like lets me recenter, and just like, because the mornings are always so hectic, and just having like an hour of every single day where I know that I can catch up, I'm not going to fall further behind.
Right.
Super useful.
Yeah.
And at least like kind of keeping my productivity high.
Yeah.
Lately, it's been since I'm in a relationship now, and my girlfriend lives maybe 30 minutes away from here. She lives in Laguna Niguel, very close to where you live, actually.
Yeah.
And that drive is just mind numbing. So I'll just like I won't put anything on like the radio or like my phone, and I'll just drive in silence. And that silence time is just for me to reflect.
Yeah, a half an hour both ways.
Yeah, and half an hour of driving, just me and my thoughts. In traffic, just wasting.
That's what
away.
I've been doing a lot too.
But yeah, I mean, I just found that as a pocket of time where I'm not going to be able to do anything else but just think. So I might as well just reserve it for thinking.
Smart. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're so easy to switch to jams or podcasts.
Right, listening to something.
Or
like
they can kind of distract your thoughts, and maybe you learn something new, but it's really not you.
I know, it's so easy. Like
Sometimes I used to be anxious if I don't listen to something.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I should be productive right now.
Right.
But sometimes that silence is productive.
The silence is
If
productive.
you use it right, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that helped us a lot was if you think about like how time equals money.
Oh yeah.
Like, because money, the best thing to do is you just watch where every dollar goes. Like you keep tabs of everything. Like you tell us, right? You
That's my
know
job.
best. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Same thing with time. If you know where all your time goes, then you have more mastery of it. And then a step further is your energy and your attention.
Yeah.
So if you know what periods in the day you have the most control over your attention, for me, it's mostly in the mornings. Like as the day goes by, like my attention just kind of wavers, and then at the end, like my willpower to do anything, by the end of the day, it's like absolute zero, right?
I can't do
You're
anything.
like, it's cat time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's cat. Yeah.
But in the morning, right after you wake up, that's like I know I'm in the zone. I'm well rested. That's when I like schedule like all my like deepest, most focused work. So we've tried to do this thing where we like block off morning until lunchtime to just no meetings.
Yeah.
Like do all the writing, do all the very deep reading, and then do all the content stuff.
Yeah.
And then later in the afternoon, we do like meetings, we do like email, like menial tasks. So that's been working out really well, I think.
Seems to be a good system.
Just blocking out, scheduling the day by focus and attention as opposed to tasks.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you something. I started doing something where if I don't have to be up in the morning, I have stopped setting an alarm. Basically just
Love that.
let the body go. And unless I have to be somewhere really important, right? I'm like, let's just sleep, you know?
Yeah.
Because in that way, it's like the body is not forcing itself awake. And normally you're still waking up at a relatively good, like you're sleeping until noon, you know?
Yeah.
It might be latest 8, 8:30 maybe. And you're like, okay, well, I woke up naturally. And then this
You
last
feel so
week,
much better.
Oh, so much better. Yeah.
Amazing.
So much better.
Yeah.
And then also last week I just decided, okay, I worked really hard, like really long days, Monday, Tuesday. Just took all of Wednesday off. And basically I called people. I called you, Matty, you know, on that day where I was like, hey, I'm not working today. But I just need to call people I haven't talked to in a while, you know, and kind of just touch base with people, you know. And that was, again, I think the mental health aspect of stuff, people forget to check in with themselves. And I think it's good you guys are taking the time, you know.
Well, I think I guess all of us are pretty lucky that you're lucky in the situation where you can just take a spontaneous day off in the middle of the week. You know, a lot of people who work a 9 to 5, they can't do that.
Right. And
if they're feeling crappy in the middle of the week, they just have to push through it.
Right. They're going to tell you just, you know, just work through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll cope in a different way with like a drink or something. Or whatever else.
Yeah. But I think it's people see the outcome, right? But they don't see the potential work that was behind, leading up to this point, right? I think again, people are going to see your videos and they just see the result, you know, but they don't see all the hours you guys are putting in, late nights, early mornings, weekends, you know. And so people have to remember there is a lot of hard work that goes into building something. It's not like it happens overnight.
Right.
And so, you know, we don't want to mislead people and say that it's easy. It is a tough route that you're going to have to dedicate, you know, your life to, and put in the hard work and you know, you're going to have some failures, but it's very rewarding if you stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to say that. Like, of course, Mike and I, we know that we've put in a lot of hard work in different areas of our life. Through school, of course, we both became doctors,
right?
And in building the business. But I could safely say that we've worked very hard on the business, but it never felt nearly as stressful, ever, as it was in school.
Right, because you were passionate about it. You were excited.
Yeah, because I had really enjoyed like entrepreneurship and being free to decide my own fate, I guess. Yeah. Right.
And that's when you know you're in a good spot. Like if you guys it doesn't feel like work, even though you're working long hours, then you found something special.
Yeah, we work so much, sometimes like all day, all weekend too, but it never feels tiring.
It feels like play.
It feels like it's energizing. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really there's some aspects of it that are like annoying. Like the one thing that I've discovered for myself, and this is something that we can bridge to talking about, which is kind of what you're going through right now, is I don't like managing people.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like being responsible for someone else's
time and
input.
Work. Life. Yeah, exactly.
Input into my life.
Right.
I don't want to be, I don't like being on top of, like getting on top of people, like following up and like, hey, like do this for me, do this. You know, like I'd rather just have it I'd rather be like left alone, you know, to just do my own thing and just have them know what to do, you know?
Right.
And it's difficult if you're starting your own business, especially as like an owner of a business, that's just a skill that you're going to have to do, regardless of whether or not you want to, whether or not they're your employees or they're just contractors that you work with. You're going to have to follow up and communicate with people.
Yeah, that's a tough thing because you ask any real successful entrepreneur, they said the best thing they ever did was hire help, good help, right? And when they found that right person to take some stuff off the plate, they're like, why did I not do this earlier? But again, the issue is finding good help. You have a brand, you have quality control issues. And it's hard to relinquish that. It's hard to delegate, and because you don't want to have to go back and redo all of the work they did,
right?
You know, so it is tough to find somebody who is trustworthy and that has the proper skills and knowledge to basically maintain your brand or your services or products, whatever it might be that you're selling to your client, you know, your clients and customers.
Yeah,
and that's the hard part is. And one of the best pieces of advice I got was, you know, hire slow, fire fast. So I'm kind of in that process of what makes sense to hire help, and so obviously you guys have, you know, experience now with hiring people, and kind of what's your experience been so far? I mean,
we have how many like I don't think we have like any employees.
No,
we have like people we work with we've been working with over a long period of
Yeah,
time.
like freelancers and agencies and stuff. But we don't have anyone that we're paying health insurance for.
Yeah,
or
right.
like under our umbrella.
Right.
Yeah.
I think now is a time where it's easier to get away with this solopreneurship thing.
Right.
Because you got the internet and you got digital tools and now AI. So it's getting easier.
Right, but there is still, in your opinion, you guys, what do you feel about capacity in terms of growth potential? Do you feel it's capped being just a solopreneur? I mean, do you eventually feel like you have to have those connections and have those
It's
contractors?
definitely
people?
capped. Yeah.
Right, because your bandwidth's only so big.
Yeah.
So how do you eventually get past that, right?
Systemize is one thing that's been great. The more systems you can put in place, then you will increase your ability to output things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Experience is huge. Like we started working with this agency, and the founder of this agency, we just became really good friends with him. And he has been, the relationship and the friendship with him has been like 10x the return than just the agency itself.
Right.
So like bringing people and working with people who know a lot more than you, that's where the value is.
Right.
the network effect.
Exactly. And he's just been introducing us to all these other founders. And that's what's really been taking us off. Like starting with the agency was one thing, but meeting other people,
Right.
when you shut yourself out and try to go full solopreneur,
Yeah.
like that's what you miss out on.
Right.
So there is a balance that you got to strike.
Yeah. I would say in terms of, I definitely echo everything that he just said. Meeting, our other partners has just been one of the most successful parts of our business. But in finding help, I think Mike and I got really, really lucky. And this is kind of where it goes back to branding.
Yeah.
Branding is very important, and clarity of message and like what we're about, our philosophy. We now like work with like 2 video editors who are they've been editing for us for a few months now. And when the people that work with you actually love your brand and they love what you do, they will put their heart and soul into it.
Right. So I have a follow-up question on that. How did you guys decide on your brand and your message? How long did that take to kind of
So long.
come up with, and actually tailor it so it was what you wanted to share,
We struggled for a very long time.
And do you think it's still going to morph into something different?
100%.
Yeah.
I think your brand is something that always changes and evolves.
Right.
You really have to, if we're going back to the whole values first discussion, we, for the first couple of years of our business, when we were Mike and Matty, before we switched to Cajun Koi, we didn't really have like a brand philosophy. We were just 2 dudes just talking, about medicine, about studying here and there. And we switched to a creative brand because we wanted to stand for something a bit more concrete and influence a lot more people. And in doing so, we had to clarify our message. We had to say, like, why do people want to like listen to us? It's not because like, yeah, sure, we're giving good study advice, but at the end of the day, we don't care if they get good grades or not. What we care is we want to help people live a more meaningful life. Just saying that itself isn't very powerful. So you have to like really clarify, what does a meaningful life look like for this person?
A more
You have to
digestible message.
Exactly. You have to describe, like, it's a whole like show don't tell idea. It's like, yeah, like I can show you to live more, like I can tell you like you should live a more meaningful life.
Right.
But we actually have to show it through the brand identity, show it through the videos, show it through the stories we tell, show it through the characters that we create, everything about it. Like once you really get around to showing instead of telling, that's when you get like that's when people start to fall in love with something.
Right.
Because
it's not just fluff. It's not just talk.
Yeah. And I don't think we've done, I mean, obviously, like I'm saying this as if we have built this amazing brand. We haven't really. We haven't figured anything out. But that's just kind of the mindset that we're kind of approaching it with now.
Well, but you guys are living in, on a day-to-day basis. You're following your advice, your own advice. You're practicing what you preach. And I think that's, again, because at the end of the day, even if nobody else listens to you, you guys are living a very meaningful, full life on an individual level. Right?
Yeah.
Just for ourselves.
Just for yourselves.
Just
I think
for
that's
ourselves.
That's where it starts.
Right. And that's amazing, right? Nobody can take that away from you guys.
Yeah. And it's great that we have like, we never had a community either before, but now we have like, we brought a place for them to come together. We host all of our community stuff on Discord.
Right. I love Discord. Yeah.
And community is growing fairly rapidly on Discord, and it's just like also connecting with your community.
Yeah.
And getting their feedback about what parts of the brand they like and what parts they don't like. It also helps us tailor our message a bit better.
Yeah.
And so we just got really lucky with like finding video editors or like team members who just like, hey, your brand is actually sick.
Yeah.
Like I love this message. Like you've actually helped me overcome certain challenges in my life. those people who want to work with you are going to do such a better job
Oh yeah.
than someone who's just like, hey, I need someone to do this for me. Will you do this for me? And if they're there just for the paycheck,
Right.
then it's not. And then
It's gonna be lackluster.
It's going to be tough for you to build a lasting and trustful relationship,
Right.
Because they have no investment in it. You know,
Right.
They didn't, like
And
you
you can
didn't
find anybody to take a paycheck, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's been something that's very important to us, or like that I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed that too. Is just like when they love our brand, then they are so much more hardworking.
One thing I realized pretty recently is that we were trying to approach the word brand, like with a very like business mind. Like, what are the right words we need to choose? You know, like what is our mission statement and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
It's
when I
outdated.
I mean, it works. Like
Right.
it definitely works since so many companies use it.
Yeah.
But what clicked for me, like I was just lying in bed. I couldn't sleep because like, oh, what, gotta get this brand thing down. And I was like, what are we doing this for? And I realized that we're just living the way we want to live.
Yeah.
Right. And what I realized, the connection I saw was after I was talking to my parents, because our grandparents recently passed away. And so we're talking to them. I was talking to them about like superstitious stuff and about spirituality.
Yeah.
And really our brand to me is like our religion now. It's like I have faith in this way of life,
Right.
that it's going to get me to where I want to be, to build a meaningful life.
Right.
And that religion is self-improvement.
Right.
That's what everything is built on for us. And when something big happens in your life, like you go through a breakup or something, trying to lose weight, trying to regain self-confidence, everyone is going to eventually step into like, I call it this river of self-improvement. It's just flowing through.
Yeah.
Everyone just kind of walking alongside it, but eventually everyone's going to eventually step into the river of self-improvement.
Yeah.
And when they do, we just hope that we're there to help
guide them.
guide them on this religion.
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to and should take on self-improvement at some time in their life.
Yeah, hopefully they hop on our boat, because there's a lot of people who are
for
pretty
sure.
A lot of boats, yeah.
Right,
But
but-
ours is pretty sick.
Well, your boat's pretty dope, and the way where your boat's going is a little bit safer than some of these people, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're advertising a boat and they get like a little raft, you know. So I think it's important that you guys have a strong, moral foundation, and people can see that through your guys' work and just through knowing you guys. And then you guys are living it too. So
Yeah.
And I think some people. There's a lot of people out there that lie to themselves about whether or not they need help, what they're looking for, what they want. And that kind of all facets of life, not just whether it be career or relationships. I think people needed to be more honest with themselves. And I think that they're going to be able to see, okay, where are the areas that I can improve on and should improve on, and but don't take credit away from where you're crushing. If you're doing a great job in one area, like make sure you celebrate those moments in those areas. But again, if you're too weighted in one area or the other, you got to make sure that you find some sort of a balance, because you don't want to be so work driven that you're not playing, or so play driven that you're not taking care of yourself or your family. So
It's easy to get lost.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's in terms of like the self-improvement route. I mean, people are going to be lying to themselves to say, no, I'm okay. I don't need to improve.
Right.
You can always improve.
Yeah, that's a very limiting mindset in itself.
Right.
Saying you don't need
Yeah, I don't need
improve,
help.
or
I don't-
rejecting it or in any way,
Right.
shape or form.
Right.
You've always been into self-improvement from as long as I can remember you too.
Long time. And the funny thing is, actually, COVID was an even bigger launch pad for that.
Yeah.
I had a chance to read a
Was
bunch.
that your spark?
Oh, for sure. I was
was that
I was
time?
basically at home, just had the time to meditate and just read. So I read a lot of philosophy.
Yeah.
A lot of
So there was no,
philosophy. Yeah.
Because the way that I see people who get into self-improvement is because like what Mike was saying, they're going through something really difficult.
Hardship. Yeah.
A breakup and or
Were you going through something?
a career change
No, not really.
or something.
I think it was just having more time alone. I think it was just basically COVID forced me to I live alone. So it was like, okay, well, there was no more social pressures. It was a time to basically enjoy walking on the beach, just reading. I read so much during COVID, and it was stuff like, there's a couple books out there that I just really love that, when I do go through those hardships, I refer back to those books.
Yeah.
And one of them's Unlearn, right? It's a great book. And basically he tackles, it's kind of funny because the book is basically his thoughts. It's like 101 things about, everything we kind of come across in life. And it's just his thoughts. He's like, you might agree with none of it. You might agree with all of it and somewhere in between. And so I read that book a few times, a lot of Stoic philosophy, but it wasn't any sort of hardship.
Right.
It was really, I would just say like the opportunity to spend time alone. And then if I had to pinpoint potential hardships, like it was in 2018, that's when my mom first got like diagnosed with cancer. And I think like seeing how she kind of waited until, she was going to wait for retirement. She's retiring this year, thank goodness, right? And so I think it was one of those things that like seeing her go down the more traditional route, seeing my dad go down the more traditional route and having health issues, that was eye-opening for sure. But from a self-improvement aspect, it was always something I think early on that I always wanted to be better. I always wanted to get better and not having the closed mindset that, I'm fine. Like the comfort is there. I don't need to get better,
right.
And then COVID, just having the time to think about stuff, and now it's like, okay, yeah, don't be afraid of the science. Don't be afraid of listening to, if there's something that you feel like is wrong in your life, what I like to do is, okay, obviously you're unhappy about something, and whether it's a temporary thing or it could be more long-term, take the time to actually evaluate and diagnose kind of like, a doctor would, what's wrong in your life, and kind of pinpoint it. I think, again, most people are afraid to deep dive into that, but then
most people just sweep it under the rug.
But most people actually know what's wrong. They just don't want to admit it to themselves. And so I think like, just taking the time to actually self-reflect during those time.
That's a difficult skill.
Well, then, so it's not so much you had like a giant life traumatic event, but it sounds kind of similar to like what I think we went through. It's like
there's something different, I think, but yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to yours next, but I think it's like there's like a giant traumatic event that will just flip you 180, and then there's the other one where it's like a chronic, slow. You've just been going at it, just been grinding, going through high school, college, whatever, just going at it and not ever taking a break.
Yeah.
And not ever actually taking time to yourself to reevaluate what you're all about.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden COVID hits. And then all of a sudden you have all this free time. Now you're realizing, oh shoot, I'm looking back on the path that I just traveled and I didn't have all this free time.
Yeah.
Because I never stopped to reflect. That was me.
You had the burnout and you realized,
exactly.
taking the time to actually see.
Yeah. So
crazy.
It wasn't a big event. It was just all this time I was running with my eyes closed. I never saw.
The blinders were on,
Yeah.
Okay, actually that's similar to mine, but I had not a traumatic event. There was a specific event that opened my eyes to realizing that I was kind of going without a map. Like,
what was that?
Well, in med school, or like all up until through med school, I lived in a very reactive way. I was very reactive to life. Like I was always stressed. I was always anxious. I was always like, oh my God, I have to study for this. Like there's so much to do. And I never really took time to actually think about, am I doing what I want to do?
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's just so much I have to do, and I was always living in constant fear. And in every area of my life, I was like still having fun with my friends. I was still partying. I was still having fun and meeting people. But there was the incident that took me over the edge it was actually about a girl. As I think is very common for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
It's the classic "the girl who got away" story.
Oh yeah.
And I was in med school. I was during my second year. This was like right after I took step 1, so I was like, fully like relieved from this really big stressful exam I had to take, and I had been seeing this girl for like 3 or 4 months, and I thought things were going great. Obviously, stupid me, oblivious to even how relationships work or anything. And out of the blue, she just like dumps me, And I was just like, what went wrong? I had no idea. I was like, it was a complete shock to me.
Yeah.
And then it was from that moment where I was in shambles, and like just like grieving about like, oh, like I can't believe she got away. I can't believe she got away. That I started getting into self-improvement. Like I read a book. I forget what book I read at that time. I think it was Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
She actually gave it to me, which is funny.
That is interesting.
Because she was a self-improver, and I was not really. I was just like, I was always laughing. I was like, oh, like, haha, like, I love yoga because I do like yoga and like meditating and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's always been important to me. But like, I had never looked at life through the lens of the self-improvement lens, and I was going through it from that breakup, and I read that book, and I just realized that I was like, holy crap, like the way to not let this happen again is to just become better.
Yeah.
And I'd never even considered, I was like, I have never even thought about getting better. I was just doing things and just like hoping that things would change and work out, but they won't unless you actually do something about it. And so that was like the kind of the spark for me where I was like, I realized that Because like after that breakup, I like reflected. I'd been single for like 2 years,
Yeah.
3 years at that point, and I was like, all the relationships that I've had in the past 3 years, they always end this way, and I have literally never thought to myself, why?
Right.
You know, I was just like, oh, there goes another one. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, there goes another one. Then I'm like, oh, if I actually want to, but like none of those women made me feel the way that she did.
Right.
You know, she was the one that got away. Because all the other ones, I was like, ah, that's fine. Like whatever, I'll move on.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want that to happen
one
again
felt a
with
little
that
different,
person.
yeah.
You know, and so that is when my self-improvement journey really kicked in.
Yeah.
And we were starting YouTube at the same time, so it was just like the whole learning journey of things. But it was a very specific moment for me that opened my eyes to realize that all those things I had been doing with my eyes closed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And well, I guess if you, I did have a breakup back in, I think it was 2018. I think that was girlfriend from college, and we were together for over 4 years.
I remember.
Yeah. And so that was, I guess, I would say that was also probably a pivotal moment, because I think, like you said, those types of things that I just basically went and focused on myself.
Exactly.
But it wasn't necessarily. It was just because I think, okay, well, you have all this free time on your hands now, and it was more just like, okay, well, I don't have the emotional capacity to want to focus on somebody else at the moment, so you focus on yourself. So I think it was unintentionally probably the start of the self-improvement, but it wasn't really diving into what type of resources are out there. It was just, okay, I'm going to go hit the gym more than I normally would.
Right.
I'm going to go get outside more, travel some stuff, get more education. So it was kind of just like, I think, unintentionally. And then now it's more focused. Like you said, you're presented with people that have gone down that route, and you maybe meet people and stuff, or you presented a book that kind of triggers that. That's more intentional now. So I think it was unintentional, and now it's more intentional, right? And it's kind of funny because like in those moments you're hurting so bad, right? And then you realize it was probably the best thing for you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so grateful. I would love to just tell her like, hey,
right.
I don't want to be with you anymore.
Right.
But you changed my life
but thank
in
you.
a very great way. Thank you very much for that.
You still talk to her? No, I'm assuming not.
This is
go tell her.
This is very funny, but she actually texted me like 3 weeks ago.
What's funny is they always say the best form of revenge is success.
Yeah. Well, she lives in Virginia, so I'm never gonna. She was like, "Hey, like I've been thinking about you, blah blah blah," and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, that's funny."
You're like, "That's
I've been
cool,"
watching all your
but I'm
videos,
on to bigger
so-
better things. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm in a relationship now, and so I have no interest in teasing.
Well,
anything like
exactly,
this, so I was
yeah.
just like, oh, it's funny. It's
Yeah,
just,
it is funny. Yeah.
That was kind of my nightest,
Yeah.
if you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It sucks to have to go through that, but you came out a better person.
no, yeah, it sucks going through the thick of it.
Yeah.
But I'm so much happier that I went through something like that.
It's hard because some people do crumble, when they go through those traumatic life events, And so it would be, I think it's important what you guys are doing, the work, because if they had a community, if they had a resource to go to when they have those traumatic events, whether it be something within their control or something outside their control, I think it's important they have a place to be able to say, hey, this happened, I'm feeling down, and having people lift them up and say, no, we got you, we're
Having
gonna
a supportive
and let's get you on track,
Yeah.
So I think even if you do that on an individual level, or if you have that community, you have a group or something, people need to make sure they have people that are hearing them, and they feel like they can talk to somebody openly about those issues or those events that they're going through. I think that's important because it's hard when we're growing up, especially, a lot of times we're told to man up or just don't even think about your emotions and stuff.
Right.
And now it's like, whoa, no, it's okay to just talk about what you're going through. Like it's not a weakness, it's not a flaw.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to realize that they can talk about what's going on and be better because of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up. I'm starting to believe more and more that once you start your self-improvement journey, you need to pair it with some sort of project or you need to create something.
I like that idea.
To be human is to create.
Yeah.
So like content creation is one thing. You can try starting a business, try going to entrepreneurship. New hobby, joining a community like you just mentioned. But you need to pair it with some sort of project, because just thinking about it, just ruminating on it, like you need to express
So much bundled energy.
what you just learned.
Right.
So not just reading the book, but you actually took action on it. And I remember during that time, your music was so good.
You remember that? What happened, dude?
Your
Yeah, of
music,
course.
but that was like your night
Music was always my creative outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the way that I would cope with it in the past. If I went through some hard times, I would write a song about it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Like what you talked about was also something I want to bring up. Drew, you said when you were feeling down or after a breakup, you would just hit the gym more.
Yeah.
You would just. What else did you say? You said you hit the gym more. You would just travel.
Yeah, education. Education was
something
important.
like that.
Can you get better in,
It's a good project.
those other areas? Yeah.
Yeah, I would think like just hearing that, like there's a difference between doing the actions of something and then doing the actions of something with intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important distinction to make, because in the past, like before my self-improvement mind was really in, if I was going through a hard time, my coping mechanism was, I'm going to go work out a lot more. I'm going to play some music. I'm going to write some music, and I'm going to go hang out with my friends. I was doing those with the intention, though, of putting a Band-Aid and masking my emotions. Whereas now I do those things with the intent of reflecting.
Right.
So you can do the same actions that you would have done before, but if your
Right.
intention is not actually to self-reflect,
Yeah.
then it doesn't actually move you forward.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a really weird
and
distinction.
expressing too.
Yeah, exactly, and expressing. It's a very weird
Yes.
distinction to make. But like just doing the actions of like what people say, like, hey, what I do to relieve stress is I go work out.
But what's the why behind it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The most important thing is actually figure out the why.
Yeah.
It's not just the action.
Yeah.
It's the why behind the action. So
Right.
it's like a very interesting distinction that I had to make
Yeah.
too, from realize like after that.
And
that
that's,
incident
I
for
mean,
me.
that's eye-opening. I mean, right? That's
Yeah.
a nice revelation to have and say, okay, well, that's cool, right? But yeah, let's put some purpose behind this, and push you towards the direction that actually makes clear.
This is from Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you heard of him, but
The name sounds familiar, but I
Big
couldn't
on-
quote anything.
yeah,
He's an angel investor, very prolific philosopher type
Okay.
guy. I think
Yeah.
you'd really enjoy
I'm
his
sure it would.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly about leverage. It's like the biggest eye-opening thing that happened to me when I switched from working as an employee to like working self-employed was
Yeah.
the concept of leverage. So basically, you said that there's like a pyramid of leverage that you can tap into. I'm actually going to quote Alex Hormozy. You remember Alex Hormozy? He's another entrepreneur, basically. So both these guys have like pretty much the same quote.
Okay.
But like the bottom tier is that you need to get people to work with you, like to collaborate with you. And they call this labor.
Okay.
So you get people on your team and then you ask them to contribute labor to your cause.
Right.
A step above that would be capital. So you get investors to come in, or you get these people to lend you money so you can go do your thing. Those two bottom levels of leverage requires other people's permission.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you got to go out there, you got to ask for it, you got to
Right.
pitch. Above that, you start getting into things like I think it was content, but basically when you create a video, podcast, write anything, a blog, anything that goes online that's content, media,
Yeah.
that usually doesn't require leverage. I mean, require permission.
Right.
You can just do that. We just do that all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
And we do it once,
we're doing right
and
now.
we replicate.
Exactly. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Put out a video, it gets thousands of views, but you only put in the work once.
Right.
Write a book, publish it
Boom.
once, but you can sell 1,000 times.
Right.
So above that would be code,
Yeah.
programming, make some software or whatever, Notion templates, whatever, right?
Yep.
So like those two top levels, the basic idea is that those things don't require permission at all,
Right.
and the bottom ones do.
Right.
And when I was an employee, I had zero leverage over my life. Everything I was completely dependent on my employer to take care of me.
Right.
But now that we're self-employed, we have the ability to crank all these levers.
Yeah.
And it's not, and they were saying that it's not just like you have it or not. It's like how much leverage, how much of people's time are you using, how much of people's money,
Yeah.
or how much code or how much media are you writing.
Right.
So that just completely shifted my mindset about finding work and about creating things in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that unlocked so much.
Yeah, no, I mean that's and that's again. I think it's weird for people to try to conceptualize, especially as an employee beforehand. Like, okay, I can use other people's time and money. Like again, usually you're the one that's doing the work, and for somebody else and spending. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily your money, right? But yeah, I mean it's this locked in concept that's just so different, and it's very foreign. That's not taught in school. You're not taught about that. That type of leverage in a traditional setting. Yeah. And the only way to do that is learn from others or to just go out and do it yourself.
I mean, for real estate, it's like you need to get like property managers and like people to come in, plumbers and electricians.
Right.
You need to have like people in place.
Yeah.
You can't just like program a code to like just take care of all your real estate for you.
Well, one of the things we mentioned too earlier off mic was basically, kind of why real estate didn't work from like a job career perspective is you're so locked geographically.
Geography
right?
too, yeah.
And so the digital world, I mean, is incredible because you have so much access to everything. You have so much bigger reach, right, for your products and services. And even though, I mean, people make a killing in doing, whether it be commercial, residential, real estate, but if you're the one that's actively providing that service or product, I mean, you are locked to your specific region. You have to be an expert in that area, be available to show, on weekends and stuff, open houses and show tenants. It's really tough having to be physically attached to something as part of your job,
Yeah.
So.
And real estate requires so much capital.
So much capital.
Like you usually need to partner up.
Yeah, well, there's ways you can get around that, right? You
can borrow loans, but that's still asking permission from someone else,
right?
Be it a bank or someone else.
True, and if you have some capital, I mean, like even if you just wanted to invest in things like, well, this is nerding out on financial stuff. There's things like REITs, real estate investment trusts. That
REITs, yeah.
You can, if you want to get your feet wet with real estate, you can go that route and kind of see what that looks like and. Get some dividends back on those payouts and stuff and see what it looks like to own real estate, right? And then you have liquidity, right? If you needed to sell those shares, then you can easily get that money back as opposed to real estate. It's a time thing. I mean, it can take 90, 120 days, for things to close if you bought property. So I think real estate's a great asset, but there are some limitations with it, And I have these conversations about some other friends who were talking about, do we buy real estate? Do you buy businesses,
Yeah.
Because the thing that's cool about businesses is if you see a business that's doing well, right, but you see there's a lot of areas they can improve on, right? And if you have those skills or that knowledge, you can step in there, make those systems way more efficient and effective, right? There's really no reason you cannot blow past the ceiling of that prior business. Real estate, you're kind of capped,
Do you think you need more capital to buy a business or buy real estate?
I mean, it depends on the business. There's like micro cap businesses that you can buy,
Yeah, I guess that's right. Whenever I hear about like people getting acquired, I always hear like $10 million.
Oh, well, see, but see,
$3 million.
Oh yeah, but see, that's like those are like
those are the successful ones.
I know. Getting acquired. I was like, we always hear about those.
You
That's
can
always
salvage
the dream.
a business.
That's always the dream as an entrepreneur. Is like to get acquired for like 8 figures.
That'd be awesome. Well, I have a buddy that just recently bought a business, and it's janitorial services. It's a franchise, SBA approved, so he only had to put like 10% down. So his entry cost, his capital was not that significant. It was like $62,000. Sounds like a lot, but compared, you're about a business, right?
Yeah.
And if he can figure out where those flaws are, as an older couple looking to retire, okay, well, they're not technologically savvy. They're not good with digital space. So if he can find room to make and improve on those areas, make it more efficient and effective, well, look, he could double, triple, 10x that thing, And again, with very minimal capital, cheaper than buying a residential piece of real estate, So that's what's cool about that is that, with real estate, you're kind of capped in terms of rental income, right? And so, okay, like that's really your upside is how much rent can you get out of it.
Unless you like remodel or like
sure it can you can do forced appreciation, right? There's ways to do that, but even then though, I mean, it can only go up so much, right? So at least with a business, you can cash flow that. You can be a cash cow. You can exit,
and you have you have the freedom, to put your systems that you want.
And put some managers in place, and now it's basically passive. So I think business is a cool
idea. That I feel like a lot of people don't really think about that in kind of investment.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
People do angel investment too.
I know.
If you don't want to like fully own it, you can try to fix the systems from the outside as a mentor.
Right.
Do that too.
Yeah. 100%.
I guess it's just like the colloquial term of investment. People just think of stock or real estate.
For sure.
But they don't think about investing in another business to grow it up. Blow it up.
You make a good point about that cap, that ceiling. Because actually, when I was still employed full time, I actually sat down with my coworkers. And we calculated, we did some math.
Yeah.
We were like, what is the ceiling for a doctor working at, I probably shouldn't disclose the...
Well, you don't have to disclose numbers, but we get the idea. There's a cap on it. Yeah.
What is the ceiling? And we found out it was like $6 to $8 million for your entire lifetime.
Over
If I
a
just
lifetime.
continue working until I'm 65, that's how much I'll make.
Yeah.
I'm
bad.
It's not bad. It's great. Like for someone who's like,
I'll take out your fees.
great.
exactly,
school.
you work hard and you
great.
get all that,
Yeah.
but then you see like the potential on the other side. It is asymmetrical potential.
sure.
Yeah.
People are making that in a year. So
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, I'm thinking, I should take a shot at this.
Yeah.
Right.
And
That's the whole stability versus
That's the whole
risk.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and if you look at how many businesses that do $6 to $8 million, it's a large amount. I mean, you could easily build that up if you just dedicated 2 years. I mean, I believe that we could easily build $1 million businesses. It's just people aren't willing to put the time and energy in,
Right.
to actually focus on building these products or services. Right, they get lazy, they get distracted. But I feel like if you just dedicate it like you would to your normal job,
Right.
it's exponential. And then once you do it, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can basically follow what other people have done successfully, tweak it so it's your own, and then there you go. It's really not that difficult, but I think people get scared and they think, okay, well, I don't have the skills to, again, self-doubt,
Right.
and all those things that we talked about,
self-confidence to bet on yourself.
There's also a know-how. Like you have to know how to do it.
Oh, for sure.
One thing I realize is that if you're going through traditional education, you front the money and you pay it all, and then that's it. You're set. You just do exactly as you're told,
Right.
and you will be set. You glide in your 401k and in your life plan, whatever.
Yeah.
But on the other side, the business side, I feel like if you don't pay someone, that's up to you to figure out. If you pay someone, you can get there a lot faster.
Oh, yeah.
But that's up to you to actually know to go and pay. Whereas like if you go into traditional school, they make you pay.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you're an entrepreneur, you got to go out there and find the people to pay. Like we just found like our business coaches and our YouTube coaches or whatever.
Right.
We got to go out there and find those people. That is I realize that's like that's the difference between the two paths. And down to the core, the difference is just motivation
100%.
to actually proactivity.
Well, and discipline too.
Discipline.
Motivation is like a match, right? It's good for little sparks, but you have to have the discipline on a daily basis to get in there and do the work. And I agree with you. And I think the cool part about explaining to people or showing them the entrepreneurial route is that it gives them another option, right, outside of the traditional route, right? Because there might be people that just love school and they're really good at it. They have the scholarships, and they're like, cool, like I can still do traditional and I can go try to start this on the side. If okay, I really like this starting a business route. Well, I don't have to go and finish school. But if they say, okay, well maybe I need both. Maybe I'll have connections and the network effect at college through professors or mentors or other peers. But you see some very successful entrepreneurs that dropped out of college. And because they had this grand idea, they had the skills, they had the discipline and motivation, and realized that okay, this was a waste of time and money. So whatever form of education you want to, whether it be traditional routes or something that's more like online courses or just doing it through the work, trade schools. I mean, people got to realize there's so many different opportunities out there that's not just the traditional route.
Yeah. I think one of the big benefits of going off the traditional path, like going for something entrepreneurial, is that you realize that you can really do anything you want to.
Right.
When you stay in the traditional path, like you've closed all those doors to think that anything is possible. But even if you do the entrepreneur path and you don't even if you fail, you will still have the understanding and realization that anything you can do and try anything.
Yeah.
And it's just that idea of like knowing that there's possibility out there is the huge difference to me about the traditional school. Because like when I was in school, like, I didn't even fathom that this was possible.
Right.
And it's actually very easy to start a business. Like you wouldn't know that though.
You just have to take those little baby steps, get started. And ask around. I think people just don't realize that if you just ask, most people that have done it are willing to help.
Right.
And they'll do it happily,
because they
get
enjoy
excited.
it. Yeah, they enjoy it.
And it makes them a better entrepreneur too, right? It makes them a better mentor if they can share and educate and teach. I think teaching is a undervalued skill.
But as someone who does bookkeeping and there's a lot of number management for other companies and stuff.
Yep.
As entrepreneurs ourselves and as solo creator, like solopreneurs, what are some good ways that you would recommend people in entrepreneurship to think about money, how to manage their money,
Yeah.
And manage their expenses in a way that's not gonna break their bank account? How do you think about money, and how do you think people should think about money?
Well, I think a lot of people are afraid to look at their bank accounts, to look at their expenses. So the first thing would be to track everything, whether that be in Excel, whether that be through a software like QuickBooks. You just have to know where your money is coming from and where it's going. Because and get a very basic understanding of financial statements. Understand what a profit and loss is, right? Understand how to properly set up income accounts and expense accounts, right? So you know what your bottom line is on a month-to-month basis, on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis. Then understand what a balance sheet is, even from a personal like net worth perspective. You need to know what your assets are, and you need to know what your liabilities, your debt is, right? And then you're left over with what's called equity, is basically what do you own as the individual or as the company, right? So understanding those are the two most important things. You can do cash flow statements, but they're not as necessary. So just understanding basic financial accounting, tracking your income and expenses, and then setting up a budget, and if you can, I would say have somebody come in and basically automate. Again, we have all this software that's available, that's just technology.
Right.
Have stuff automated, because you don't want to have to be going in there and trying to set up, okay, I have to manually click everything, right? But if you have the systems in place to where you set up all the back end work, right, and then you've automated that stuff, well, all you basically have to do is just make sure that everything reconciles end of the month, and then you've got financial statements and things are paid. And then also from a pricing perspective, I think you guys have probably experienced this, but understanding what your products or services are worth, that's always a tough thing when you're first getting started. Is okay, well, how much do I charge people, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing services, do you charge a monthly thing, as an hourly thing? And I think you just have to you have to mess around with it. You have to kind of try a bunch of stuff to see, okay, is the demand too high, right? I'm not charging enough, right? If I'm charging too much and there's not enough demand, then you just have to kind of be willing to adjust your prices. And there's also things you can do, like profitability studies. Okay, if you offer multiple products or services, figure out what's making you the most money and hone in on that. Understand your core competencies, right, as a business owner, and then outsource the rest. Because again, you don't have all the time in the world. So if you don't care for accounting, bookkeeping, hire somebody.
Yeah.
It can take time, right? Find good help, and then have them automate it, right? I've just seen people that are really, really good at what they do, right? They're really good at being attorneys. They're really good at being doctors, but they have no financial concept of what it means to save, what it means to budget, what it means to properly even collect on money for services rendered, And so I think it's just making sure that you're not afraid to look at your finances and looking at, even if you have a lot of debt, tackle that, get in there. Understand what you're dealing with, what you're faced with. And so I think once people kind of face the music and say, okay, let's just tackle this, let's get it started, and then automate, then now you have so much additional time. Because my pitch is basically I handle relax while I do the math, basically. And people are looking to either enjoy their life, right, or they want to be able to focus on their core competencies as businesses.
Right.
And they don't have the time or the skills to be able to go out and figure this all out. So they hire me to automate, to audit, and put those systems in place.
Yeah.
And then they can focus on the rest of the business. So I would just say hire the stuff, outsource the stuff you don't care to do or know how to do.
Right.
Understand basic financial accounting and financial reporting, and then automate,
We recently put a book out.
Yes.
Kind of about personal finance.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah. I read it. I read most of it. I glazed through most of the stuff. Yeah.
Most of that was Mike.
mean,
but that's kind of like personal finance.
Elementary
just like
for you.
Elementary.
But like the
stuff.
compound interest stuff that you guys talk about, right? I mean, that's an important concept that a lot of people don't know about, So
I think thinking about money in terms of like a business is different though than personal finances, because there's
to some
different
degree,
kinds of
because at the end of the day, you still have to use capital, whether it's your own or somebody else's, to buy things that are going to produce a future return for you or future value, right? And whether that just means to be putting money into savings or into investments, right? Or you're buying equipment or stuff that's going to produce end goods to give to your customers. At the end of the day, you still are investing or saving, putting money away to have a future benefit for you, right? Or you're trying to grow your net worth or the market cap of your business. So they're similar concepts, right? But obviously, the reason why you have that capital is probably different, right?
Yeah.
But the concepts can be the same. Yeah.
So do you have any like for your own business and then all the ones you've done before, do you have any like frameworks you follow in terms of how to budget projects and stuff that you work on, or?
Yeah. So if you're talking about if somebody is looking to invest in something and basically expel capital, yeah, well, from a financial aspect, you use something that's called like net present value, right? You basically determine whether something is equal to or greater than zero based on your expected return minus your capital outlay. That's kind of what the formula you use. But that's from just for financial perspective. So if your net present value is equal to zero or greater than zero, that's when you determine, yes, that project's worthwhile. If it's negative, then it costs more than it's going to return. And there's some factors in there that are obviously based off of certain assumptions, right, that you cannot necessarily predict, like your expected rate of return. And then you have to look at the full, X amount of years, right? So there's formulas you can use, but generally speaking, I think people can't make those assumptions until they have all the information.
Right.
Because you have to, you can't be working
with data.
Yeah, you need data. And so even maybe that's a year, maybe that's 2 years, right? I wouldn't say there's any golden rule for that. I would just say make sure things are cleaned up, make sure you understand your bottom line each month, and then you do a monthly comparative. Okay, where's the money going? Where's the money coming from?
Right.
And then again, if you're just looking from like a personal perspective, if you have debt, pay off high interest first, and then work on basically putting money away every month, to build up that nest egg. If you're a business, it's going to be on a project by project basis, whether it be to hire somebody, whether it be if you're an investment fund or something, right? It depends, again, what the purpose of the business is and how you plan to use that money. Because there's always going to be risk involved, right? So, and then you have to just basically evaluate that on a per project basis. Yeah.
Because on our side as a business, like we always want to work on new projects and stuff.
Sure.
And it's really difficult to like gauge, like, is this a worthwhile investment?
Yeah.
And you're right. Like we can't really say yes or no until we get more data about how much time has been put in, how much money's been spent, and is it like, how is that affecting our bottom line?
Right. And there's probably similar businesses or similar channels or something that have maybe gone down that route, and you can probably see their success. You can probably see there might be data available to see what that upside looks like.
Right.
And of course, you're going to know what your worst case scenario is, right? Because it's basically money spent. Right. So I think again, you look at worst case scenario, best case scenarios, and then you kind of like an average. And so you can do some modeling with that too. But at the end of the day, I mean, things can go way better than expected, or they can, that's just lost money.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, at the same time though, money spent, right? That's also a learning lesson there.
Right.
You're just paying for education if things don't go well. Right.
You don't have to do that again.
Yeah. But obviously, you need to have reserves. So you don't want to be spending all your cash out. Like, oh no, we don't have any savings. We didn't save anything for normal operating expenses. Yeah.
Here's a question for you then. Since you do work with a lot of clients, what would you say are some of the most common spending problems that the business that you work with?
So businesses versus personal, because personal is people just rack up.
I'm talking more. Oh, okay. Let's do both. That could be fun. That could be fun to talk about.
Very different.
So with personal stuff, most people are they're just not aware of how much they're spending on stuff, and whether it be either their kids or they just don't, they're like, oh, I make a lot of money. I can just blow it. It's fine. But they don't realize that, okay, well, you still have car loans. You've got a mortgage, maybe multiple mortgages, and then if you have kids on credit cards, if you don't know how much you're spending on shopping versus food versus travel, and, if you ask the normal individual household, right, how much do you spend on food every month? How much do you spend? They have no idea. Right. And so I think it's just people just throw it on the plastic and they say, okay, cool. Well, that's double-digit interest right there if you're not paying it off, So I think it's just more of like the ignorance is bliss from the individual side, from a personal level. And people just think that the money that they're using on credit is theirs when it's not. You're borrowing money. Right. So people just need to educate themselves better about what it is because credit cards are great if you know what you're doing. I mean, free points, free type of coverage on insurance, rental car insurance. There's a bunch of benefits there, right? But you just can't get in the cycle of overusing what you don't have, right? Right. Businesses, some pitfalls there. I've noticed that a lot of people, they just don't understand the financial statements. They don't know how to read them. Because again, they're really, really good at what they do, but they have no money sense in terms of how to track stuff. They don't know how to even read financials. And it's kind of surprising. You're like, well, you're a business, right? They're like, well, yeah, but I'm really good at this thing, you know? And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to have to, so I try
That's
to,
me, dude.
Yeah. See? But see, I tried to educate.
That's why I got him.
That was me too.
That's why I got him.
There you go. So, but you guys make a good team though, right? Yeah. You know, so I think it's just important for businesses you need to at least have a very basic understanding of money concepts and financial statements, because you show somebody a balance sheet, they're like, I don't understand what I'm looking at. And like, okay, well, that's scary. You know, you're dealing with a lot of money, or maybe you have a lot of money coming in, but you don't know what accounts receivable are. You don't know what accounts payable are. Like that's terrifying. So I think it's just, again, it comes down to just a lack of education, and people just need to familiarize themselves. They don't have to be experts, but understand the basics.
Yeah.
And
what are some of the problems that arise from the businesses that don't understand those things?
I think it's a similar thing, too much debt, you know, or they don't budget things properly. So they have all these bills that come in, and then they're not collecting on their own invoices. So they're, okay, well, you have all these services rendered, right? But you have like, you know, $100,000 that you haven't collected yet. Why would you not go collect the money for stuff you've done, right? It doesn't make any sense, you know. And then you've got, you know, maybe $120,000. Not even that. Maybe you have like $80,000 worth of bills that are coming up due, and you're not properly. You don't have money to float that cash. So I think it's just people are not aware of where their money, like how much money they need to collect on. And then again, they're not properly budgeting their bills, you know. Or here's a big thing is I've had clients who are like, I'm 18 months behind. I don't know where my books are at. Like, you're 18 months, you know.
Yeah. Damn.
So basically, it's people just get behind on stuff. They get overwhelmed. They get caught up in doing other stuff. They're like, I have honestly no idea where my books are at, where my accounting's at. And so I think that's just because, again, people are either afraid to look at it or they don't have the time. So really, it's just it's people just getting lazy or being afraid to look at their accounting. And then, but that doesn't do you any good, though. You can't make informed decisions if you have improper data. You know? Right. So I think it's really the big thing. It's just not, putting in the work or hiring somebody to do it.
That financial statement thing is huge.
Oh yeah.
So when I excuse me, I took a dual degree. So like with my MD, I got this thing called an MHA. It's like a health administration. Okay. It's basically business school.
Nice.
But geared totally towards medical, hospital, healthcare stuff. So like I looked at that, and I looked at an MBA. Yeah. Like all the breakdown of the courses and the curriculum, and literally the MBA. The only thing different there was that it had a ton of finance courses. It's all finance, dude. See it, yeah. Like at that moment, I realized, like, dude, a business person is someone who's just really, really good with money. Yeah. And you know exactly, like, reading a financial statement was something like very elementary that we learned in our MHA. Yeah. And then I looked over the courses over there. It's like gets way more advanced. Like figuring out, like, you can leave a lot of money on the table if you don't know, like, we have like this chunk of money we're not even spending. It's just sitting there. Like that's so much opportunity cost. We could be spending it somewhere to grow faster, stuff like that. Right. But yeah, that was just eye-opening for me. But what you mentioned is like, you take your time to look at your financial statements, accounts, receivables, stuff like that.
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing too is I feel like a lot of business owners, they don't understand negotiations either, which is kind of an off-topic thing, but being able to negotiate for things, right? I think that's an important skill. Having the sales background, because again, at the end of the day, that's what you are. Any business owner is trying to sell something, right? Right. And so I think if there's any advice I could give younger people, it's like commercial real estate was a sales job, right? You had to cold call people. You had to be uncomfortable kind of stepping outside that comfort zone, you know? So I think like it's important when you're young, again, to face rejection and failure on a daily basis. Yeah. Some sort of sales job is a good place to start because basically all you're going to get is what you can get out, right? Right. So it's scary, but I think like once you break that mold and understand, okay, well, this is the very core of any business is you have to make sales. I think it's good for young kids to get that exposure. Slightly off topic, but it ties into the marketing. It ties into the basic foundations of any sort of successful business.
Definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, from your perspective, spending all your life with money, and there's no right answer for this. Yeah. But what would you tell like a younger version of yourself, or like a young nephew or young cousin or something like that? About how would you tell them to think about money? Like money mindset. Yeah. Money mentality.
That's a good question. I think Because because a lot of people let money have power over them, right? There's this whole thing that people get emotionally tied to money. So I think if you can find a way to detach yourself from being emotionally tied to money, because money's going to come and go, right? There's going to be times where you lose money, and there's going to be times where you make a bunch of money. But I think you have to be emotionally detached from it and not let it have power over you. Understand it's a very powerful resource, but you cannot let it get emotional, right? And I think it would be one of those things that celebrate your wins, right? And understand why you lost, but don't let it have power over you. Be the one that's controlling the money. Don't let the money control you. That's the kind of the mindset I would give people. Yeah.
It's hard for people who don't have a lot of money.
It's true.
It controls them every single minute of the day.
Yeah.
Like, what would you tell those people?
The people that have basically
Paycheck to paycheck.
or
Money controls them.
barely
Everything
even
about
being
them.
able to make, not to be able to make the paycheck.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I think for those particular individuals, that's a hard question. Because I feel like that is probably the majority of people that have gotten to a situation like that where maybe they can't afford to go get a better degree to be able to get that higher paying job. And if they have a family where they're underwater or having issues paying their rent and stuff, I think it comes down to just education. You need to inform yourself about what other options you have out there to either reduce your expenses or increase your income, and whether that means, getting a certification online, right? Or going to the library to learn a new skill on your free time to be able to go and negotiate a better paying job and not have to work maybe 2 or 3 jobs, but find one that's pays better, because in this day and age, I mean, the best raise you can get is changing companies. It's sad, right? But a lot of people don't stick to one company their whole lives now, right? People will get a 50% pay raise by just changing companies, So I think if they can look at these free resources online in their off time, and it's going to suck for a while, but if you can take some time on a weekend or at nighttime to look at those free resources or maybe cheaper resources, to learn a new skill or to educate yourself on, okay, this is the route I need to go to get out of this cycle, to out of the rat race, That's honestly the only way to do it, unless you hit the lotto, which is not going to happen, right? So I think they just have to take control. And again, we can go on a whole different tangent about the difference between fault and responsibility, right? But they have a responsibility to basically understand the problem at hand, and they need to go change something, because otherwise that's the definition of insanity. So I think they just have to evaluate, okay, what's the cycle I'm stuck in? Even if there's going to be a temporary pain of maybe having to take on some debt to basically get out of that, you're just going to have to take longer hours. You're going to just have to face
They have a responsibility.
They have a responsibility, and it's going to suck. And maybe it's not even their fault, right? Maybe they were born into a situation. Maybe they had a medical accident and they're in the medical debt. Or there's a lot of different reasons why people get stuck in that, and it's not their fault, right? But they do have a responsibility to pursue a better life for themselves and their families. So, and that can take a lot of different forms. But that would be my responsibility: is figure out where you can grow and learn and be better.
I love that. I'm going to emphasize what you said because it just totally clicked with me right now. But basically, you're saying money is a tool, right? Yeah. It shouldn't have emotional investment on it. But people perseverate about it because lack of money is crushing their lives. But if you look at it, money is an exchange of value. And if you, as a person, don't have value, then don't perseverate. Don't focus on not having money. Focus on building up your value.
Beautifully said.
Maybe you're poor because, I'm not saying why, I'm not saying it's your fault,
right.
But you might be poor because you're lacking, exactly what you said, you're lacking education, you're lacking knowledge, you're lacking skills,
discipline.
You're lacking discipline, you're lacking habits. Something about you might be lacking, and it is in the amount of money you have.
Right.
So don't focus on the money and try to make more money. Focus on yourself. Right. Focus on building up that value.
Yeah. I think that's a huge takeaway. And I don't know. I think people, again, I think it goes back to when people lie about what it is that they want. They say, oh, I want to be a millionaire, right? I want to have all this money. But you look at their daily habits and none of that even lines up with, with those goals or those
There's an
particular
identity
dreams.
disconnect.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
think again, it's yeah, like you said, just making sure they understand their value and where they can work on that. And that's again the whole self-improvement route. There's so many free resources out there to allow people to grow and become something bigger than they ever imagined, So, but they're the only ones that can help themselves. They have to ask for help. They have to go find those mentors, find that network, find that community. And if you're not willing to put in the work and make those connections, like it's going to be tough.
You're going to stay where you are.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I believe in people. I think they can do it, but they just have to believe in themselves,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the first step.
Well, yeah, that was a fun conversation, man. I'm
was a
super
blast.
stoked you came
Enjoyed it.
in.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll definitely link all of the random miscellaneous stuff we talked about in the show notes.
Where can we find you?
Yeah,
Or where can
okay.
our listeners find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the OCBookkeeper.com,
Nice.
and that's my website. I mean, all my socials are pretty much private, though. I'm kind of I like to keep to myself,
Yeah.
But the
You gotta
website's public, so
We got to get you on the personal brand game, dude. We'll talk about that.
yeah, we can definitely look into that next time. I gotta work on it, but I would like to be like the most successful, quiet person. Like I just
That's awesome.
as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
I would like to do that too, actually.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. Even though we're very public.
Oh, you guys are very congrats on the 600,000 subscribers,
Thanks,
by the way.
man.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
It's been,
That's been amazing. Yeah.
thanks, dude.
So I'm excited to see you guys hit that milli one of these years.
Oh, yeah.
One of these days.
Yeah, I was hopefully not years. from
No,
now.
it'll be soon. It'll be sooner than we
We'll see.
expect. Like talked about exponential growth. It's
Yeah.
coming.
All right. Yeah. It was fun having you. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Mike and Matty.
See ya.
Memories are fresh on my mind.